Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with you for another great episode of Faith Positive Radio. Yay! So do you ever find it challenging to eat well? That is the kind of eating that you should do that promotes good health the way that God intended for you to. You know, your body is a temple. It says so right there in the Bible and everything. What about other parts of healthy living? Feeding your mind, right? Feeding your spirit. Would you like a guide, someone to walk alongside you and help you find your way to healthy living? Well, then you're going to love this episode of Faith Positive Radio, because your guide, my guide, our guide today is Rhonda Huff, who is the author of Healthy Living from A to Z. Listen to this now. The Guide to Finding Who You Really Are and Feeding Who You Were Created to Be. I absolutely love that book title, Rhonda Huff. Thank you. Did Dave Hancock think of that, or was that you?
It was me, but they definitely had a hand in it.
Yeah, so David Hancock's been a guest on Faith Positive Radio before. He's the publisher and founder of Morgan James Publishing, plug for our publisher right there. Healthy Living from A to Z. So Rhonda, what does it mean to you, and therefore what should it mean to us, to live healthy?
To live healthy is basically four components: emotional health, which also includes spiritual health, physical health, nutritional health, and cognitive health. So if we're healthy spiritually, if we're healthy mentally and emotionally, if we're eating properly, if we're getting the proper movement, and if we're keeping our brains active, then we can live a healthy life.
Boy, living healthy in the midst of a pandemic has proven to be a challenge, or at least in terms of a quarantine, right? The quarantine 15 is what I heard a lot of people talking about. They picked up 15 pounds, but also binge watching television all the time. That can't be good for your cognitive health. So what have been some of the ways you've seen people could improve their living to make it more healthy in 2020?
Well, it's interesting because I was really concerned about my business here, my brick and mortar business, because we closed in March.
Oh, wow. Now tell us about your brick and mortar business.
Okay. It's called Rhonda Huff Fit. And we do personal training, we do health coaching, nutritional coaching, and pain management. And so we do everything that encompasses a lot of the stuff that you will read in the book. We do there in the studio. Okay. And we had to close. So for 3 months, we just opened today.
That's right, because gyms, fitness centers, all those places in Virginia closed. Now we're recording this in the middle of June, so that's what Rhonda's referencing, is that they just opened back up today.
Yes.
So those quarantine 15ers are coming in today, right? But it's different in a fitness center today than it was prior.
Well, it's interesting because almost all of our clients, about 78% of our clients, just went virtual. So they were still training with us. And because we also do health coaching and nutritional coaching within each session, they were able to get all of that anyway. And so the people that were with us really stayed pretty good, and we haven't seen that quarantine 15 at all. And the interesting thing too is that we've actually increased, like more people are working with us now than when we closed.
Because you had the virtual component now. So
yes, we had to think quickly and get it together and figure out a way to make it work, and it worked more beautifully than we could have ever imagined. And we were able to support our clients, they were able to support us, and it just ended up being a beautiful thing.
Oh, I love it. It's amazing how God can work even in the midst of a pandemic to help people live healthy, right? So were these one-to-one, like we record Faith Positive Radio half for years on Zoom. Did you use Zoom one-to-one, or were these classes that you conducted virtually? How'd you do it?
We've been doing mostly one-to-one, some duets, especially like people who are married, they're working out together. And that's been, that's fun to watch that happen. But
well, for some couples, that's fun. I'm not sure my wife would want to work out with me, but anyway. And she loves me and I love her. But
Right, right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We do FaceTime, Google Duo, Facebook Messenger, Zoom, whatever they're comfortable with.
Oh,
And as
sweet.
long as they have a way to see us and hear us and we can see them and hear them, it's actually been really good.
That's amazing. Well, good for you for innovating and pivoting in the midst of all the insanity going on around us. So the first one of those healthy living components is emotional that you mentioned.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to Faith Positive Nation about how to emotionally live healthy?
The very first thing that I cover in the book and that I cover with health coaching clients is that we have to be authentic. We need to recognize where we are and accept where we are, accept the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. And then we need to move from there. So if we can't be authentic and accept where we already are and love ourselves right where we are, I feel like it makes it much harder to make changes. Because if we're not accepting and loving ourselves right where we are, then we're going to stay stuck in shame. And if we stay stuck in shame and guilt and feeling bad for ourselves and the pity parties, if we stay stuck there, we will never reach the goal that we're shooting for.
And yet as human beings, even as Christians, misery becomes a friend after a while. And so I was going to say my cognitive function, so I'm going to bleed over into one of your other four healthy areas. But the way I think about myself, the way I feel about myself, even if it's miserable, it's familiar, right? And so I just stay in that pattern and it's self-defeating behavior. Yet as Christians, we know that Jesus has set us free. So why is it so challenging, Rhonda Huff, for us to leave the guilt and the shame behind?
I think a lot of it is society. I think we're trained to do that.
Okay. How are we trained? Well, we allow ourselves to be trained by society, right? I mean, Paul's pretty clear in Romans about, don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. What are some of the pitfalls that we find ourselves falling into in society?
The news.
The news.
I mean, you turn on the news and how many times do you hear a positive and uplifting message on the news?
I'm laughing because that's one of the things we talk about in Faith Positive Nation all the time is just being a conscientious objector to all that news, because they're in business to monetize negativity, right?
Absolutely.
And if it bleeds, it leads. All the blood and gore goes at the front of the newscast. And if you're still alive at the end of the newscast, you might get a feel-good story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So stop buying the lie. What about this contribution of Facebook, Instagram, things like that, social media to our lives, in terms of everybody projects his perfect self, right? Yes. And for some of us, that's a challenge because I feel guilty because my life's not perfect like hers, or I'm ashamed of myself because I'm not as successful as him. How do I achieve healthy living from a feeling standpoint and accepting myself who I am in Christ, right?
Right.
In the midst of Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff.
Yeah. I just wrote a chapter for someone else's book, turned it in today, another Morgan James author, and I addressed that specific thing in this chapter. And it's two components, in my opinion. One is, if we're doing that type of posting consistently, only showing the good, which I'm not advocating we go on there and share all the bad, because I believe there's a time and a place to do that. Yeah. But if we're constantly just showing the happy parts of our lives and that's all we're seeking out so that we can put it out there, I think that we get into a mindset that we feel like that's what life has to be. That's where we're supposed to be. Our life is supposed to be that perfect rendition, which we all know is not possible. We cannot live a perfect life. It's not possible. But I think that our minds, we get it so deep into that subconscious mind that it starts making decisions for us. So we get stuck there. But then the other thing that we have to remember is that everyone else is showing their highlight reel too. Nobody's life is perfect. And so I think if we can be, it's tempting. And I always say of the commandments, which one it's always interesting to me to hear people say which one is the hardest for them to follow. Ooh. And for me, it's coveting. And I don't covet things, but I covet families. Like my family, I'm no longer married. My family fell apart. And So I look at other families who are healthy and getting it done and just loving each other.
Right.
And that's what I covet. I will covet someone's lifestyle. So I have to be very careful, especially with social media, that I don't get in there and let myself start coveting someone else's good family or whatever it is they're portraying.
The projected family. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have to keep it in the back of my mind that, yes, that's their highlight reel. And it is my job to be happy for them, to encourage them, and to be thankful that there are families out there that are surviving when so many don't. And so to keep yourself in a spirit of gratefulness, I think is key to overcoming, for me, what would sometimes be coveting.
Gratitude is an amazing load lifter, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, especially for that emotive and cognitive skill set. Yeah. So, and look, I know it's harder, Faith Positive Nation, to be grateful some days than it is another, but at the least, as Christians, we can be grateful that Christ forgave us of our sins, right? And that I'm living in grace instead of guilt. I'm living in salvation rather than shame, right? But secondly, I mean, maybe you just didn't get run over by a concrete truck that day. And that's something to be grateful for, right? We can always find something to be grateful for. So we've really talked about the emotive and the cognitive, the emotional and the cognitive. There were two bits of healthy living sandwiched in between those. Talk about those for us.
Well, the nutritional component, and I put them in order of what I feel is the important. So emotional, you have to get that right.
Emotional is first, right?
Yes,
okay. What's second?
Right in order to get any of it right.
All right.
The second is nutritional. What goes into your mouth? Oh. And I have a very simple thing called food. F is free of antioxidants or anti-nutrients. And that's anything, if you look on a label and you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
That's right. Well,
so it could be called free of unpronounceables.
Right. So I should be able to read it, right?
Yeah.
Without having a degree in chemistry. Right. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
O is original in form. So that means if you are eating a chicken breast, it should look like a chicken breast, not a dinosaur.
That's hilarious. I love it. In other words, it shouldn't be pieces, parts that are stamped into a dinosaur.
Exactly.
I love it.
Make sure it looks like what it's supposed to look like. Well, and the further you get away from it, the less healthy it is. So even if you take an apple, an apple in its whole form is healthier than applesauce.
Right.
Healthier than apple pie. It just goes down. The less you can tell what it is, the least healthy it is for you. So try to stick with the original form whenever possible.
Apple pie looks like it's in its original form to me, though. I mean, it's a pastry. It sits in a pie pan. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know I should say it. It's got cinnamon.
An apple cut out on top, right?
I'm thinking I could take some red cake icing and draw an apple on.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Yeah. No. I love that. It's in its original form. You should be able to recognize it, right? So I should be able to pronounce it. That's the F. Mm-hmm. I should be able to recognize it in its original form. So potato's a potato, right? Not coming out of a box. Okay. What's the second O in food for?
The second O is organic. It is so important. And people like to fight about organic foods, and they're like, oh, it's no healthier.
Oh, really?
Well, no, if you look at the nutrients of an organic piece of fruit versus a conventional piece of fruit, the nutrients are the same. The difference is you're getting a pesticide cocktail, especially if you're eating smoothies or juicing anything.
Really?
If you're doing conventional smoothies and juicing, I would rather you not do it at all, because you're getting a pesticide cocktail. Oh. And the other thing, you can't wash that off, because think about it. The pesticides get into the soil, which gets into the root, which gets into the fruit or the vegetable. So it's inside too.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not something that you can just wash off. So whenever possible, always go with organic. Organic produce will start with the number 9.
Okay. When you say start with the number 9, what
on their little barcode?
Oh, on the barcode. Okay, organic produce.
Conventional will start with 4, and genetically modified will start with 8. So you want to go with the 9.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck, write that down so we can know that. Right? Put that in the show notes. That's amazing. So 9 is the magic number that pays.
Magic number.
And one of the things that I've discovered is, I love what you're saying about the pesticides getting soil and come up inside, but oftentimes these fruits, because they have to travel so far, right? So I think local sourcing is a huge game changer too, because that apple will get sprayed way out there in order to ripen it by the time it gets to me on the East Coast. And apples are so commonly sprayed now, even though I love apple pie, right? I can't eat apples raw anymore because of the stuff they're sprayed with and things that are in it, because I literally have a histamine reaction.
Try the organic. I bet it would change.
Right. And locally sourced organic would be like a
locally
grand slam,
sourced and organic.
Right. So the F is, I need to be able to pronounce it, right? What's in it? And then that first O, help me with that. Oh, in its original form, right? And then the next one, we're seeing how I'm doing here, Chuck. The next one is organic. Okay, what's the D in food for?
Dense in nutrients. So
dense
the more nutrients, the better.
So what am I looking for?
You're looking for all different colors of produce. So when I go shopping, I go straight to the produce section. I only buy organic. And the main reason that I do that is because I know that sometimes I'm going to be eating out. And if I'm eating out, I'm not getting organic. They're not serving organic in most, at least in Newport News, Virginia. They don't have organic.
Yeah, well, it's hard to find all organic places out there, right?
Very hard to find. When I lived in New York City, easy. I could find it there, but not here. And so when I go into the grocery store, I'm only going to buy organic. And I look for every single color of the rainbow, and I just buy whatever organic vegetables they have. I don't even think about recipes or how I'm going to fix them. I just buy as many colors as I can find. Mostly vegetables, some fruits. So, fruit is very high in sugar. We want the micronutrients that it's in fruit. We just want to be careful with it. So mostly vegetables, some fruit. And that's how I start my shopping trip, is going that way. And when I get home with all of my stuff, I buy grass-fed beef. I buy free range chicken. I buy some kind of wild caught fish. And then I usually buy some, like when I buy my beef, I usually buy some type of grass-fed steak and some type of grass-fed hamburger or bison beef. And so that's usually my go-to. Yeah, it's good. That's my go-tos. And everything else, I may do quinoa. I will do pastas, but only like chickpea pasta, quinoa pasta, brown rice pasta. I don't do any white pasta. So then I get home with all of that, and I just kind of put it together, not really thinking about, oh, this should go with this or that should go with that. What I'm looking at is, how can I get the biggest bang for my buck? How can I get the most nutrients in this meal?
Oh, I can smell the spaghetti sauce now with the zucchini in there and the mushrooms. Okay, well, my favorite fruit is blueberry.
That's a great one.
Eat blueberries
every morning.
For your
brain.
Yeah, I know. See how it's paying off? Yeah. If you're listening to this, I just showed my bald head in all of its glory. So yeah, blueberries are great, and the antioxidants that are in there. So I've got the nutritional aspect. So my first one is emotive. My second is nutrition. My final one is the cognitive. What's that third one in importance there?
Physical.
Okay.
We need to move.
Right. Now I know that God made my body a temple, but it's really hard for me to stop my pace of life and do the kinds of things that like I get out of my chair and move around, right? So many people that I work with around the world on Zoom are sitting. I stand. So talk to us about how we can honor this temple of God that we have from a physical standpoint and do the kinds of things that are healthy for us in the midst of this frenetic pace we keep in daily life.
Right. Some people that I train will set timers. So especially if they're desk jockeys and they're at their work and they just get immersed in it, they'll set a timer so that they know they have to get up and go walk around.
So how long do they set a timer for?
Some people do 30 minutes, some people do 60, some people do 90, but within at least every 90 minutes, you need to get up and do something.
I find that helps cognitively too. I set a 55-minute timer, and just because it's a different number, right? But I find it helps cognitively too. My productivity has gone up since I started setting 55-minute timers and get up and move around.
It increases blood flow to the brain.
Yeah, well, I need all that I can get. Obviously, it's not doing good for my hair growth. But
you know what else increases blood flow to the brain?
what?
Grounding. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm about to.
Take off your shoes, get out onto the earth. Get
I
your
love
feet
it.
onto the earth. It's full of negative ions. We are constantly bombarded with positive charges. You know,
Okay.
the laptop, the iPhones, the Wi-Fi, the microwaves, the TVs.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to offset that by getting onto the earth. So get your bare feet onto the earth. 30 to 40 minutes, if you can get that.
Wow.
Anything that you can do just to get your feet onto the earth, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes. But 30 to 40 minutes, they say, can increase the blood flow to the brain by 50%.
What? Isn't that amazing the way God made our bodies?
Made us to move.
Yeah, he did. But, let's think about that for a second. Rhonda Huff, rhondahuff.com is a website you can go to right now and learn more about healthy living from A to Z. When we were created, we were put in a garden.
Ding, ding, ding.
And our feet were on the ground. I don't think we got shoes till we got out of the garden, right? Exactly. And so we had all those wonderful fruits and vegetables too, right? Mm-hmm. I love that. I've never heard it. That's called grounding?
Grounding or earthing.
Okay. All right. I'll have to put a scrub brush by the back door when I come in from outside to clean my feet up, because my wife's not going to want that dirt on the floor, right? And I don't want to have to clean up behind myself. That's pretty awesome. And 50% increase in blood flow to the brain?
Because it restores the proper viscosity to the red blood cells, which can then increase blood delivery to the brain by up to 50%.
We have gotten so far away from how the good Lord intended for us to live, haven't we?
It's so terrible. It's so terrible. Yeah.
But what you've done is, even if I live in an apartment building or something, I can go find a park or some green space, right?
I did that yesterday. I went to the beach.
Oh, see, this is me drooling.
In the sand.
Okay, so if not all of us live near the beach. So if I brought a 5-pound bucket of sand home from the beach, would that be the same thing?
Well, if it actually comes from the beach, that might work. If you bought it at the hardware store, maybe not. But if you want those microbes, you want the bacteria and the microbes and all that yummy stuff that gets into your body and helps your gut biome and makes us healthy.
Oh, I love
it.
But
and proper movement is important too. So
talk to us about
my actual degree is in exercise physiology. So that's how I got my start, was in exercise physiology.
Oh, nice.
And proper movement, making sure that all of your joints move the way they're supposed to move. Okay. It is not normal for someone to say, I can't lift my arm above here.
Yeah, that's not much of a range of motion, is it?
How old you are. Everyone should be able to do.
Yeah, I should be able to brush my hair if I had hair, or rub my head or something. Yeah, right. Yeah. So both hands, right?
All of the joints are moving properly is so important.
Okay, and as we age, at least, as I've aged, I've discovered that some of the activity that I did, I need to be good to my joints a little bit better now than I was when I was younger. In other words, I used to run, right? But now I walk. And that's just because I can tell in my knees that's something. But the important thing is to keep moving.
Keep moving.
Right.
And make sure the joint is moving in every single direction.
Okay. All right.
So we're a very sagittally planed people, right? We sit, we walk, we stay in the sagittal plane. We need to make sure we're moving sideways and we're rotating and that sort of thing as well.
Okay. All right. See, now you're making me want to move around and do it.
And you're standing, so you can.
we need. Well, I see you're standing also, right?
Well, I'm sitting, but I'm still moving around.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's cool. It looks like you're sitting up pretty high then. So God created our bodies for movement. He didn't create us to be static. But it looks like, Rhonda Huff, that everything else around us encourages us to be sedentary. The proverbial couch potato, right? And so I'm sitting in front of a static screen that's feeding me these, what do you call them, negative ions?
Positive.
Positive ions, and I want to
get rid of the positive, get the negative from the earth.
Okay. All right. Being faith positive, you would think I would want more positive, but you're saying I get more positive than the good Lord designed my body to withstand, so I want to get rid of negative, right? So it looks like to me the first and most challenging step for any of us to do what you're talking about with this physicality is that one beyond our familiar. So talk to us about the cognitive, that fourth dimension. talk to us about the cognitive. How do I self-talk? How do I form thoughts around getting up out of my desk chair, setting that timer, or getting up off the sofa in the evening from binge watching Netflix?
Sure. Well, with cognitive health, one of the things that we want to offset is the propensity to get Alzheimer's. And one of the best ways to do that, and the only proven ways to do that, is by exercise is number one.
Okay.
Nutrition is number two.
Okay.
And then when we get into, everybody wants to do crossword puzzles or anything like that they think is training their brain, those are good. However, if they're doing those, speed is the option, like speed. So if you're doing crossword puzzles, you want to see if you can get faster every time you do it. If you're doing word search, you want to see if you can get faster every time you do it. You want to work on speed. Also, the other part of it is learn something brand new. So that is huge. Even if it's just attempting to learn a new language, and that gets frustrating because it's hard, right? And we get frustrated and we want to quit. Well, as far as brain health goes, your brain does not care if you actually learn French or not, but it does care that you're trying. That's what it's going to respond to, is that attempt to learn. So as it relates to getting up out of your chair, start researching it. Learn something new. Learn something new about the way your body operates. Learn something new about pain management, because we get stuck in habits. And to break those habits, what my clients find is that when they go away on vacation and they decide to just take the 2-week break and they don't train, all their pain, not all their pain, but some of their pain comes back.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
If we're not moving, we're going to hurt. So when we hurt, that's the first thing we think is, I can't move because I'm hurting.
Yeah.
That's just the opposite of what it needs to be. If you're hurting, move.
Yeah, push through the pain.
To move. Yeah. Not necessarily push through the pain, but get yourself moving. So when I say move, if you're too inflamed, which is usually the problem, is we are so inflamed, which usually is because of your nutrition, by the way. But if we're so inflamed that it hurts to move, I'm not saying get up and go walk. I'm saying take every single joint and move it.
Do what you can.
Just move. Get your wrist to move. And if it hurts to move your wrist, you're going to move into where it hurts, and then you stop. Tomorrow, you're going to try to go a little further. Just get those joints moving in every single direction that they can move. And you'll start noticing that sends blood flow to the area. It sends oxygen to the area. And eventually some of that pain will go away. Then you can actually get up and walk.
Yeah, we've got just a few minutes left, Rhonda Huff. You can go Faith Positive Nation to rhondahuff.com right now, and we'll tell you how to get your copy of Healthy Living from A to Z in just a second. You talked about the spiritual and emotional dynamic as being the most important. It looks like to me we as Christians should have a competitive advantage in all of this, right, in healthy living. And yet so many of us don't. If you could give one piece of advice, one tip to Faith Positive Nation right now about their spiritual health that would move them forward into healthy living, what would it be?
Find a life verse and cling to it.
Find a life verse and cling to it. Wow. That's great advice. And that's why we ask every single guest on Faith Positive Radio about a favorite Bible verse or Bible passage, right? And oftentimes I hear guests say, Rhonda, that here's the one for this season of my life or this particular time. So tell us what you mean by life verse.
Something that when you start getting out of your element, when you start feeling like you're dropping into that guilt or that shame or that unworthiness, something that pulls you back out of it. And I too have lots of verses that are my favorites, and I have specific reasons for them being my favorites. But my life verse, the one that I cling to always, is Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I'm God, because I am a go-getter. And I think I can handle everything on my own, and I think I can run all these businesses without his help. I just get in that go mode.
How's that working out for you, Rhonda?
It never does, right? You have to bring it back in. And so I have to just stop and just go, be still. Let him help me.
Yeah.
And another one that's really close to my heart right now in the time we're going to is Philippians 4:8. Focusing on whatever is true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy. And that also helps with my tendency to covet other people's lifestyle. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about how wonderful it is that good things are happening to people, whether or not they're happening in my life or not.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yep. I love what Dr. Eugene Peterson writes as he translates Philippians 4:8 there in the Message translation. He talks about fill your minds and meditate on, and gives you that laundry list that you just gave. And then he says, the best, not the worst, right? The beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse.
Yeah.
And we can make that choice in these amazing God-given brains, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe that we do have to recognize the negative side, but give it a drive-by.
Sure.
Give it a drive-by. Say, I'm going to give myself a pity party for 15 minutes and then I'm moving on.
Yeah.
So you have to address it. You have to notice it and recognize it because it's there.
Right.
But don't get stuck in it.
Just give yourself permission to experience it without capitulating to it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And without judging it.
Yeah. Rhonda Huff is my guest on this episode of Faith Positive Radio. The name of her book is Healthy Living from A to Z, the guide to finding who you really are and feeding who you were created to be. Chuck has put the cover of that book on Rhonda's page on our website at getpositive.today. And you can click right through to Amazon and pick up your copy, or you can go to rhondahuff.com, and I'll bet there's some ways of finding that book on rhondahuff.com, and I'll bet there's some other great stuff for us to experience as well. Isn't there, Rhonda?
There's some blog posts on there that you can read through, and you can see kind of what we're up to and what we're all about.
I love it. I love it. And thanks for not telling me that I can never eat my favorite pound cake that I enjoy baking, that I can just eat it occasionally, right? You said 80% of the time I need to eat well, and the other 20% I can eat a pound cake.
Right. And you don't want to look at that daily. Like, don't make 80%, 20% of every day bad. Look at that kind of as more of a big picture. But when you eat your cake, you want to eat it with thankfulness and gratitude. And
I am.
Guilt.
I am. No guilt, man. I walk a couple of miles with Bo the Wonder Dog every morning up and down the mountain here, and it's so I can bake and eat pound cake.
There you go. There you go.
You have been an amazing guest for Faith Positive Nation. I got lots of useful information. I learned a lot today. I learned that chickens don't look like dinosaurs, right? And so I think that's a beautiful thing. Rhonda Huff, Healthy Living from A to Z is the name of the book. Go get your copy right now. And you just blessed us so much today. I pray God's blessings on you, Rhonda, and all that you do, that you may find that peace and quiet within you that comes from being still and knowing that you're not God, but that God is still God.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.